Hello. Today's Bible study comes from Matthew chapter 18, the first through the fifth verse, and it reads as follows. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." First and foremost, if you go to the ninth chapter of Luke, you'll see that a couple disciples, had been arguing about who was the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. They weren't talking about Jesus; they were actually talking about themselves, because they were saying who was the best amongst them. And Jesus knew they were doing this; he knew their heart. So this was a time to correct them. And when they came to Jesus and asked, it was a question that one we should never ask. We already know who the greatest in the kingdom of heaven is. We just want to get there. We just want to be there. Um, so Jesus corrects them, and he does it in his normal manner of teaching them. And they come up, and as they ask him this question, Jesus says to him, "Hey, bring a little child unto him." And this was in Mark 9:33, and it says, if I can get it up, uh, it's loading slowly, but if you go to Mark 9:33, you'll see that the child might have been one of Peter's children. We don't know who the child was, but the fact of the matter is, it came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he began to question them. What were you discussing on their way? And it was about who was the greatest among them. Something none of us should ever care about, because, like I said, we just want to get to glory. We don't care about where we at in heaven. If I'm in heaven, I'm in heaven. So Jesus starts to talk to him, and he tells him, he places this child among them, and the child is sitting right amongst them, standing, whatever it may be. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children." Now, the one thing about children that you have to remember is children are totally dependent on their parents. They pretty much submit to what their parents say. They're obedient to a fault. They brag about their mom being this and their dad is some kind of major superhero, and they tell people about him, and they know and respect what is said to them from their parents. So they submit themselves. And he's telling them, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like these children, submit yourselves, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." And that goes for all of us. We have to submit ourselves unto the Lord. And when we submit ourselves, we probably will take out that who is greater, who is higher, because we know that with the submission to the Lord, there come some other activities. And one is humility and being humble. So he says, "Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of the child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." And you remember when the Lord talks about those who are first here will be last there. Well, this is still true. This is still true. And we have to realize that we all will have to be in that mindset. We need to remember that we are humble. We should not think of being the greatest here. We are servants here. Jesus was a servant here. Jesus was here to save the world. That is servitude. A sacrifice, that is servitude. Jesus was about servicing us, from our physical needs to our spiritual need, from our teaching to our education, to showing us indeed to telling us in word. And I mean, he just served us. That's what he did. So it says, therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. This child in this group was the lowest position there. We could have told him to go do this and the child would go do that. We could tell the child to go do this and the child would go do that. And if you don't think so, put yourself in the mindset when you have family over or your friends over and your kids are there or your young niece and nephew or whatever it may be are there, and you tell them to go do something. They don't turn around and say no. They don't turn around and ask you, why should I? They just do it. And that's what this lowly position was. This lowly position was going to serve the people. And we, as a child, we serve the Lord. And we know to depend on the Lord. All our dependence is on the Lord. Like a baby coming out of the womb and into the world, all the dependence of that child is on the parents. For food, for shelter, for comfort, for love, for raiment, to protect, to serve them, to heal them. All of that is a dependency on the parent. So as a child, we got to do all those things. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. Hey, and when you see somebody out there that is doing that, who is that? And you see Christ, and you welcome them. Whoever shall humble himself, you see Christ. This then was the answer to the question, who shall be the greatest? The secret of the greatness lay in the mindset of not being great. See, if you're thinking you're the greatest, you got the wrong mindset. But your mindset should be take the lowest position at which of right belongs to that. And the lowest position is actually the highest position in the kingdom of heaven. For a man to humble himself with the purpose of attaining greatness would frustrate itself and reduce humility to an hypocrisy. Pride will destroy a man all the time, and it escapes humility. Pride escapes humility and a false lowliness. If you look at Colossians 2:18, it says, let no one keep defrauding you of your prize by delighting in self-abasement and the worship of the angels, taking a stand on visions he has seen, inflated without cause by his fleshly mind. This is even more hateful and contemptible than open self-assertion. So as this little child, and this was something Jesus did deliberately. He put this child there and act with the disciples. And he is looking at the little child's nature. And that little child's nature was parent. Taken in words, being obedient, following what was spoken to them to the T. Oh man. And the child we're almost timid. And I was timid when my mom and dad or my grandparents or uncle said, aunt said, do something. It was a get up and move and do it. And we need to be timid when the Lord says for us to do something. We should get up and do it. And not that when we go do the action, we're not confident, but man, when the Lord says do it, it should get done. And that's how we have to be. So Jesus is telling them, get yourself together. Stop worrying about those type of silly things. Be humble like this child and do all the things that a child would do with their parents when they're brand new in this world and they're growing and the parents are instructing them and guiding them. What would the child do? And the child would depend on every word that is spoken from the parent and would depend on raiment, shelter, food, healing, and guidance. And the child would be obedient. Amen.